You probably already heard what Einstein once supposedly said: compound interest is the world's eighth wonder. Those who understand earn it, those who don't pay it. If this was or was not said by him, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that understanding what compound interest is indeed the basis to start to know how to invest. So let's jump right into it. Interest rate is nothing more than the price of money. It's the price that you will pay for borrowing money from someone. For example, let's say you need 200 euros and you ask for a friend for it. And that friend says, okay, I will lend you the 200 euros, but next month you will have to pay me back the 200 euros. That means he didn't charge anything for lending you money. He just was good enough, so to speak, to lend you money and not ask for anything in return. But financial institutions, for example, banks, they're not like that. They're not good for you. They're not your friends. They don't want you to make that trip. They don't want you to buy your house. What they want is that you ask for money, you ask them for money, and you pay interest on top of that, because that is how they make money. So if you ask for a bank for this 200 euros, next month you will not pay them back 200 euros. You have to pay with interest, which is the price of money. And you will probably have to pay like 210 euros, 250 euros, depending on the interest rate. From that, we then can conclude that interest is just the price of money, the price of borrowing money from someone. From this perspective, you may think that interests are bad because they're basically fees that you have to pay. But let's think about it. If you're the one who's lending money to people, then you're the one who's making the profit because you're the one they're going to have to pay back with interest this time. Back in the example with 1,000 euros, let's say that now you invest 1,000 euros in an investment that earns 10% annually, for example. What that means is that by the end of the year, you will have 10% of 1,000 plus the 1,000 that you already had. So 10% of 1,000 is 100. That means in your final balance at the end of the year, you would have 1,100 euros. So now we have to talk about the different types of interest rates. Now, there are many types, but in this video, we will cover only two, which is the simple interest rate and the compound interest rate. The simple interest rate will be applied at the initial value that you invested. So the first amount that you lended, that you actually put there in the investment, for example. So that would mean that if you invest in an investment that returns, for example, 1% monthly, and you invest 100 euros, that means that 1% of 100 euros is 1 euro. So by the end of 1 month, you will have 101 euros. In the second month, the percentage, the interest rate is also calculated based on the initial value. So again, 1% of those 100 that you first put, that you first invested. So 101 euros plus the 1% of your first 100 will be 102 euros. So you see where I'm going with this. By the end of the year, you would have 112 euros in your final balance. And this is how simple interest rates work. They will all always be calculated in the initial value that you invested. So in this case, it will always be 1% of 100 euros. So the formula is actually pretty simple and it's consistent. It affects a long period of time and it's always consistent. So are simple interest rates any good? Well, it depends. If you are borrowing money from someone, it's amazing because they're not pricey. They will not compound over the years or over the months. So you don't have to pay as much as in compound interest, for example. But if you are invested, this may not be a very good option because well, there's simple interest rates. They will not compound over the years and will not generate a significant amount of money. So finally, for the topic of this video, compound interest rates, how do they work? It's the same, they're all interest rates, but the difference, the key difference that will make a huge difference at the end result is that the interest is calculated based on your current balance. So, back to our example, let's say you invest 100 euros in an investment that earns 1% monthly, but this time it's calculated with compound interest. What this means is in the first month, it's always the same. It would be 1% of 100 euros, which is €1. But the difference is in the next month, the interest will not be calculated on the initial value you put, but in the current value that you have now in your balance. What that means is that now they will calculate based on the current value, which will be €101. So 1% of €101 and that consecutively. So at the end of the year, you can see here I put a comparison between both. You may think, well, that is not that much of a difference. So why would I even bother investing in compound interest investments, for example? Of course, the difference is not huge in this case scenario, but compound interest works its magic over time. That's why the phrase that says the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago and the second best time is now is so powerful in this case because truly you will see a huge difference in your balance with compound interest over time, long periods of time. Let's say you keep 1000 euros invested in 5 years, for example. Now we can see that there's a huge difference between simple and compound. Now let's keep the same amount invested in a period of 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. What we can see is that mathematically this amount will grow exponentially. Of course, this demonstration is not 100% accurate because it's not very likely that your investment will always earn 1% monthly in this case, for example. But it's always better than to have your money, under your mattress. But what about inflation, you may ask? Quickly speaking, inflation is nothing more than the general increase in the prices of goods or services. What that means is the price you're paying right now for your bread, your milk, your clothes, they tend to increase over time. It's very natural for it to happen, and it may have several reasons, but this is something that, of course, it happens. It always happens. The price for buying in a house 100 years ago is not the same as it is now. It's definitely not the same. So basically, that would mean that it's not really worth investing because, well, inflation will just take my money anyways, right? Wrong. If the inflation is higher than the interest rate you're earning with your investments, then yes, it would be better for you to search for another investment if you don't want to literally lose money. Because if inflation is higher, the value of your investment will decrease over time, even with compound interest. So, yes, if you're looking into investing and growing your money over time, it would be better for you to search for an investment that eventually is higher than the inflation rate. But this is what investing is putting your money to make more money literally with the intention of making profit and in the middle or short or long term, because inflation will happen anyway, so it's better for you to invest your money and be prepared for it in order to minimize the impacts of inflation. I really hope you got everything in this video because my main goal was to bring you the knowledge of what is the difference between simple and compound interest rate, a little bit of what inflation is as well. Thank you so much for staying until the end of this video, and bye. See you in the next one.